Have you ever encountered a hurdle with launching or growing your business? Listen, there are two things that run a business, the back end and your soft skills.
Telling you right now, if these aren't in place, you'll lose clients and you'll lose money. You don't want that? Well, you're in the right place.
Hey, I'm Dana.
Hey, I'm Sarah.
We're your hosts of the Entrepreneur Encounter, and we're going to give you a behind-the-scenes glance into our businesses, give you genuine feedback, tips and tricks, plus occasionally bring on guests that care about supporting you to grow your business organically and nurturing authentic relationships. Are you ready?
Welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur Encounter. We are your host, Sarah.
And Dana.
We are excited to discuss delegating and outsourcing. Over the last month, we had talked about goal setting, planning resources, creating systems, and this all leads up to how you delegate and outsource. As a business owner, as a leader, it can be challenging to let go because we're so in it that we know the ins and outs of everything. It can be hard to let go, but can you imagine all the things that you can do when you end up delegating or outsourcing the tasks and projects?
I know anyone in my close circle in our audience that's listening will know that Sarah and I are both in the business of delegating. We build relationships with small business owners, usually service-based, and have them trust us enough to delegate their tasks to us. But I often say, I need a me for me. I need someone exactly like me to have as much passion and resourcefulness into solving tasks and problems to grow my own business. And so I have a hard time delegating for that reason, because while I do love having people with different ways of thinking and brainstorming, it is hard if I'm I wouldn't have done it that way. That's not as efficient. So that's been a big hurdle for me as I've been redoing my systems and processes, which we kind of talked about in the last episode. It's an overwhelming process, but I'm making myself slow down and take more time to do a training video or find a blog, podcast resource that correlates with each task, no matter how simple it may be. For instance, inbox management, inbox support, how to sort things. It sounds silly, and even to me, it sounds silly, but if I want something done a certain way, it has to be written down in an SOP. So that process needs to be documented. And then I want to have resources for someone who doesn't learn in that way. I'm going to have a video or a podcast so they have that auditory learning style. And that makes me feel more confident as I'm delegating more things out to my slowly growing team.
Another thing too, because a big portion of service-based businesses are virtual, online. And with everything that's going on around the world, with everybody going virtual, working from home, you have to be very communicative. You have to do all the step-by-step, because when you're delegating or outsourcing, you want to be very specific on what you want done. Like Dana said, creating the videos and even writing it out. Because when you're virtual, it can be a little more challenging to do those things by delegating.
So we spent time, hopefully between last week and this week, our audience, our listeners, took the time to map out a process. Go pull that back out. Hopefully it's not just tucked somewhere or lost in the sea of papers on your desk, and review that process list. This is my favorite thing when I work with clients, is go through the list, and put a star, a heart, a smiley face, something next to the items that you love doing. You don't want off of your plate. If you thoroughly enjoy scheduling social media content and engaging with your community, don't give that up. If you are comfortable managing your own inbox, don't delegate that, because you're going to be anxious about, is it getting done? And stressed about that. Here's a real life example. I have a client. He seems to really like the inquiry process, because even though he delegated it, I'm doing air quotes, everybody, even though he delegated that to my team, he was still doing it. And so he felt like we weren't doing anything. And I was like, that's because you're answering them at 8:00 at night when we do that during the day. So if someone sends a lead, fills out your lead capture form, or sends an email, at 8 p.m., we will respond to it the very next day. You don't have to do that. But he seems to like that process. So we do a little less of that. So we catch the ones that he didn't get to the next day. And then we focus on the things that he does not like doing. So once you figure out the tasks you enjoy, go back through and highlight, circle some other detail of a task you don't enjoy doing. This can be something in your business, which we're focusing on, but this can also be in your personal life. If you hate doing dishes or laundry, delegate it to someone else. Outsource it to someone else that comes in, and depending on where you live, I know there are laundry services that will come pick it up, wash it, dry it, fold it, and bring it back. Or have a housekeeper come once a week just to do that part, whatever it is. And that's going to free up a lot of your time. It's going to free up a lot of your brain space. You're not going to be stressed about it, things like that. So really look at your to-do list, whether it's in your business or your personal life, and see if you can pass it off to someone else, like make a chore list for your kids. Or if you have a spouse, see if you can find a better balance of who's doing what and when. Even talk about, this has been a big one for me, is to talk about when things get done. So I'm a morning person, and I like to wake up and get all my things done so I can relax the rest of the day. My husband is not that way. He wants to have a lazy morning, then do the tasks, and then maybe have a lazy evening. I'm like, I can't relax that way. But that was something we had to have the conversation about. And I had to get comfortable with it not being done, or recognize that he is helping. It's just, he's not jumping when I'm essentially mentally saying jump. And there's nothing wrong with that. He does help a lot. He just helps later in the day when I'm like,
That's too funny. Another tip that I would like to suggest too when you are delegating is look at the workload that your team already has. So if you see that their workload is piling up, then obviously you probably don't want to delegate a task to them. Another thing too is the skill set. The people that you already have on your team, do they have the skill set to be able to take on a project, such as if you have a blog and you need help writing that? Does your team have that skill set? If not, then you definitely want to think about outsourcing to somebody outside of your team. So that's where when you hire a blog writer to do that specific task.
or take the time, if someone on your team is interested in growing that skill set, if you can't teach them, buying them a course or helping them professionally develop that skill so that it can remain in-house on your team.
Continued education, that is something that I advocate for in any type of workplace environment. It can be in your business, it can be in corporate, no matter what. So if you're not ready to outsource, then of course you want to be able to educate and set your team up for success.
I feel like as entrepreneurs, we already feel like we have so much on our plates. And in the last few episodes, we kind of have to make it sound like you have to do more to create that space and have a break. And the initial setup, it does feel like more. But then when you are able and willing to remove or transfer some of your responsibilities to someone else, you're doing it with more confidence because you already mapped out how you want to operate as a business. You're taking your experiences from working in a 9-to-5 or volunteering and seeing how other organizations run and saying, I like the way Kathy did this. I hated the way my manager, John, spoke to me when I made a mistake or I was only 5 minutes late. You take those and map it out in a living document that when you're ready, it's already done. Because I promise you, as overwhelmed as it may feel right now, when you have a full client load and then you try and do this, it's going to be so much harder.
Before you delegate, obviously put those systems in place. And we have discussed over the last month on the goal setting, the planning, and setting the systems up in place. So don't forget to check those episodes out as well. And those links will be in the show notes. Now, listeners, do you feel ready to delegate? And if for some reason that you don't feel ready to delegate and you're still questioning like the systems that you need to put in place, don't hesitate to reach out because we're always here to help you figure it out.
So as always, the details are going to be in the show notes. That our favorite tools and systems and resources will be linked in the show notes this time because we have had a lot of content kind of thrown your way in building these. So we'll have those listed in the show notes. And feel free to check us out on LinkedIn or Facebook in our communities and ask any questions, or you can email us directly. Until next time. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Remember, soft skills aren't just some fluffy buzzwords that get thrown around in the corporate world. They're the key to unlocking your full potential as a professional and a human being. Don't be afraid to invest in yourself and seek out opportunities to improve your soft skills. Sarah and I have a variety of workshops, online courses, and complimentary clarity calls for you to practice in real time with us. Links are always in the show notes. And be sure to join us next time for more insights, tips, and tricks to help you succeed in your entrepreneur encounter.